Hello, my name is Tony. I first saw Coffy as a double feature with the Jim Brown actioner Slaughter. This was smack bang in the middle of the concurrent crazes of blaxploitation and martial arts movies. Of the two films, and although I was a fan of Mr. Brown and liked Slaughter well enough, it was Coffy that made the most impression. This is for a number of reasons that I'll get into as we truck along. There must be good reasons too, as the impression has been a lasting one, and I've finally got my hands on a Blu-ray version to revisit. Good reasons though? Well, some could be considered healthy, and some maybe not so much. What can I say? I'm a sum of my parts, some of which still work too. So if you want to judge me, just be mindful of one thing. I won't care a fuck. Larry Gordon, head honcho of American International Pictures, missed out on a deal to make Cleopatra Jones, a female-centric blaxploitation flick with a splendid Tamara Dobson. In response, he press-ganged exploitation director Jack Hill into quickly delivering a revenge outing featuring an African-American woman in the lead. It went on to be a bigger hit than Cleopatra Jones and one of the most influential examples of the genre, latterly being hailed as something of a feminist work. Yeah, right, okay, I know, I was surprised too. Then I could sort of see it, by stretching credulity a bit, more than a bit, maybe a lot. I'll see if I can rationalise it somehow. Hill had worked with actress Pam Grier twice before on The Big Dollhouse in 71 and The Big Birdcage in 72, both films being of the women in prison subgenre. He wanted to work with her again, and so cast her in the lead role of the fragrantly named flower child Coffin, commonly known as Coffy. It was her breakout role, and cemented her reputation as the queen of blaxploitation, fully consolidated later in Foxy Brown. Let's face it, Pam Grier was beautiful in both face and form, and when it came to projecting strong-willed, single-minded African-American femininity, there was no one better or more fitting. She earned it, she owned it. End of. Coffy, Pam Grier, is an ER nurse whose teenage sister, Lou Bell, Karen Williams, has been exploited by drug dealers and pimps. She's wound up brain damaged and confined to a bed in a rehab centre. When we first meet Coffy, she's masquerading as a strung-out junkie hooker, who'll do anything of a sexual nature to anyone for a fix. This is a ploy to trap pusher pimp Grover, wacko Kumbuka, and nightclub owner sugarman Morris Buchanan. She holds the pair directly responsible for Lou Bell's plight. Over at Grover's place, she exacts revenge by blowing Sugarman's face off with a shotgun and filling Grover full of so much dope he never wakes up. It's the start of the film, and already we've had naked breasts, profanity, drug use, 2 violent deaths, and deliciously uncompromising lines like,
"This is the end of your rotten life, you motherfucking dope pusher."
Excellent start, so I'm all in. Dwelling on what she's done, Coffy's a bit stressed and preoccupied, but meeting up with her old friend Patrol Officer Carter Brown, William Elliott, seemingly the only clean cop in the city, she calms down. Coffy and Carter were a thing in their younger days, but now she's more into Brunswick, Brooker Bradshaw, slick black activist and rising politician. Already alarm bells should be ringing, as everyone knows politicians are evil, corrupt sleazos, masquerading under the guise of empathic do-gooders and upholders of human rights, equality and democratic process. Everyone knows they're scumbags. Everyone, apart from Coffy, it appears. Well, to be fair, this one could be different. I mean, benefit of the doubt and all that. How likely, though? This relationship doesn't stop Coffy going back to Carter's place for some, coffee. But while she's there, Carter gets a call from his corrupt colleagues, offering a deal to get on the payroll. He turns them down flat and vows to turn them in. Not perhaps the smartest strategy, showing his hand a bit early, not a prudent move at all as it happens, and results in 2 goons in ski masks busting in and beating up Carter and Coffy. Carter is now brain damaged and in a coma. These events add more fuel to Coffy's revenge gig. Fuck the small shit, she's now on a mission to take down the main men, go for the head honchos. Local drug baron and mega pimp King George, Robert Dupuy, is affiliated with Las Vegas narcotics and prostitution mafioso supremo Arturio Vitroni Alan Arbus, who is running the whole show. These are the 2 main players who she holds ultimately responsible for the twin fates of Lou Bell and Carter. Vitroni, who closely resembles a cross-pollination between Groucho Marx and Weird Al Yankovic, is also an avid user and abuser of working girls. He's not a nice guy, even though he could fit in Dwayne Johnson's pocket. Posing as a high-class escort just in from Jamaica, Coffy cons King George into taking her on as one of his stable of chicks. Immediately, King George's squeeze, Jerry, Lisa Farringer, is jealous of the newcomer newcomer. At a party in Vitroni's honour, Coffy exploits, the word exploit crops up a lot in this review you'll notice. Coffy exploits, Jerry's jealousy and provokes her into a fight by dumping a bowl of dressed salad in her face. Hail Caesar! The rest of George's girls wade in. Vitroni is impressed by Coffy's ability to fight and simultaneously expose the breasts of her attackers in the process. Being a sexually sadistic pervo, he decides he has to have sex with her and demands King George set it up. Coffy meets with Vitroni in his hotel room, packing a silenced pistol hidden up the ass of a stuffed cuddly toy lion. Her attempt to whack the guy fails as one of Vitroni's men has seen her previously out on a date with Brunswick and raises the alarm. Coffy implicates King George, insisting that it was he who sent her to kill Vitroni. Two of Vitroni's men make an example out of George by tying a noose around his neck, hooking the other end to a car and dragging him to his death through some very conveniently positioned roadworks. Held in captivity, Coffy is brought before Vitroni. Brunswick turns up, seems he's working with the bad guys for personal financial gain. There, what did I say about politicians? Just goes to show. He insists Coffy is merely a prostitute he paid for sex once, and to reinforce his loyalty to Vitroni, casually suggests she is taken away and killed. Now is that any way to treat your best girl? Maybe he had plans to send flowers later. Two corrupt cops of Vitroni's Armenian goon Omar, Sid Haig, take our girl out in a squad car. They shoot her up with dope which belonged to King George and which Coffy replaced with sugar earlier. So she fakes being drugged. She comes on to Omar and he decides it would be the nice, kind and honourable thing to rape her before she's capped. Using a length of wire she secreted in her hair, she stabs him in the carotid with it and takes off. One cop pursues her on foot, gets splattered by a truck on the freeway. The other pursues in the squad car, which he crashes due to Coffy hurling a rock at the windshield. Before the car ignites and incinerates him, Coffy has enough time to retrieve a pump-action shotgun. Stealing a car from a potential John, Coffy heads back to Vitroni's. She whacks Vitroni and his men with a shotgun, then heads for Brunswick's place. The duplicitous Politico pleads for his life, and just as Coffy seems like she's willing to acquiesce, a topless blonde emerges from the bedroom. That does it. She's not even a real blonde for fuck's sake, and she's white. She shotgun blasts Brunswick in the balls, emasculating and killing him. Job done. Coffy is blaxploitation exploitation in excelsis and is great. The script may be limited in terms of quality, but it's a pleasingly raw-edged piece of work, and does at least have a crack, pardon the pun, at injecting, and again, some level of social conscience into the proceedings. The victims of drugs, prostitution and organised crime are clearly defined as the less advantaged in society, those who are most easily exploited and compromised into law-breaking, junkiedom or selling sex. In fact, although he's a corrupt hypocrite, Brunswick's speeches about inequality and deprivation, links to crime and diminished mortality have a ring of truth. They're quite eloquent, and if they'd been spoken by a better man, he'd probably get my vote. And, of course, if he was a real person, which he's not. But then, who is these days? When someone like Jennifer Lawrence proclaims themselves the first female movie action hero, it's films like Coffy that piss gallons of history all over such thoughtless and ill-informed narcissism. Before you were born, lady, maybe even before your parents were, Pam Grier was toting a shotgun, hiding razor blades in her hair, and being the most kick-ass woman ever to sashay across the screen. And this is the importance of history, and a damn good reason why it should never ever be rewritten or eradicated or cancelled. Without it, some will swallow any old shit hawked around by any shiny, fashionable buffoon who's as dumb as dirt. And they'll think it's true. As a result, they'll get stuff wrong. And one day, they may get stuff wrong about something with serious consequences attached, because the law of averages says so. And the law of averages just fucking loves ignorance. History means we get to keep it real and don't fuck up as much. So, pay attention and don't take on face value anything any delusional self-promoting idiot tries to sell you. Their truth don't exist. The truth is what cuts it. Now, some critics were dismissive of Miss Grier's performance, decreeing it stiff, wooden, and even, in the case of one Frederick Milstein of the LA Times, whoever he is or was, childish. I reject all that. Not what I saw. Pam Grier is a very attractive, feminine, and sexually appealing actress who invests her roles with a lot of physical life. I thought her performance very naturalistic and emotionally expressive, to the point where she convinces more as a real person and less like some Barbie doll merely playing a role. She goes beyond the requirements of Hill's script. Now, it could be argued that the instant teenage crush I developed on seeing this film has influenced my perceptions, and that might well be a point. But like someone once said, or at least I think they did, perception is reality. Seeing the film again, my perception hasn't changed. Although thankfully ungrateful Pam quickly abandoned the Jamaican accent she attempted briefly. That was a complete fucking misstep. More importantly than her acting though, is that Pam Grier became a role model and feminist icon to some considerable extent, not just for black African American women, but for women everywhere. She's a strong, sexually confident, forthright force of nature who isn't going to take any shit from anyone. Now, as a short, fat, white, sexist, heterosexual teenage male school kid, it was the sort of thing I was more than happy to see. Loved it. Imagine then the potential effect on a short, fat, black, heterosexual teenage female school kid. Well, I can't. What do you think I am, some preternatural god of sexual and racial empathy? No, I can't. But maybe someone else can. And if they can and it's you, let me know about it. In case you missed it, that was me trying to rationalise Coffy being framed as a feminist work. Later, I'll no doubt ruin it. Such as it was. There is wonderfully carefree use of profane language throughout and gruesome strokes of unpleasant violence. The lynching sequence in which King George's body is dragged across asphalt and slammed through bollards, traffic signs, crates and oil drums is a combination of grisly slapstick and wince-inducing horror. By the end, he sure ain't pretty superfly for a dead guy. We get to see a lot of bare breasts, something which I and the late great Glenda Jackson don't have a problem with. I can imagine some hypersensitive lefties getting a little worked up though, and accusing the film of sexism, and, indeed, the exploitation of women. First, it's an exploitation flick from 1973, so what the fuck were you expecting? Oh, you get your understanding of the world from the words and wisdom of Jennifer Lawrence, I see. Second, the exposure of the female upper body quickly manifests as some sort of absurd joke. When Carter and Coffy are attacked and beaten, just before the goons leave, one of them takes the time to rip open the clothing of the dazed Coffy and fondle her breasts before legging it. Now, you've possibly just killed a cop, help might be on the way, and you think now is the right time to molest a semi-conscious woman? One of Vitroni's men threatens a female nightclub photographer who may have caught him on camera. He pulls a knife and demands the film, and her blouse falls magically open and a naked breast spills out. During the fight with Jerry and the rest of King George's girls, Coffy only needs to brush against one of them and their tops fall open and their naked breasts are exposed. Coffy struggles to keep adjusting her own gown to pop hers back in at certain times during the catfighting. Now, this suggests to me that Jack Hill had a thing about naked breasts, which is fine and all because who doesn't? These days, unless it's an amateur porno flick, no one's likely to get away with stuff like that, are they? And I can see why it runs counter to the idea that the film promotes feminism, although I think in some ways it does actually do that when viewed through the prism of the time in which it was made. Yes, it's full of stereotypes and it's insensitive to just about everyone in some way, but political correctness didn't exist back then. Look, at least its underpinning message that the poor and marginalised stagnate and suffer whilst the rich and privileged prosper and thrive, illustrating that eternal societal inequality, is just as potent and relevant today as it was then. God, you know, I can sense the imposed age restriction rating and not suitable for advertising revenue categorization forming already. But still, you know, this is most obviously not a family show about family-friendly things, and I never said it was. Adults watch YouTube and adverts too, and some of them don't even mind edgier, more challenging audio-visual stuff because, well, they're adults, and that's what adults are supposed to be like. Anyway, moving on, the soundtrack by Roy Ayers and the camera work by Paul Lohman managed to rise to scratch in a serviceable way rather than striking upon the inspirational. Considering the restrictions of the low budget and fast-paced shoot to beat Cleopatra Jones into the theatres, both are as good as they could reasonably be under the circumstances. Those songs about coffee are pretty bad though, like I'm one to talk. Visually, some of the grit and grain bleeds through in the Blu-ray incarnation, and that's fine by me. Reminds of the original cinema print. I got more entertainment out of watching Coffy again than I did from watching Evil Dead Rise for the first and last time. It's a fine blast of exploitation mayhem, fronted by a marvellous actress who gave the world something important and vital. naked breasts aside. What I appreciate most about it is it's so unself-conscious and unapologetic for what it is and what it does and how it goes about its business. In that respect, it's an absolute joy to watch, up there with the best of the blaxploitation best, Shaft, Superfly, and so on. I can understand it not being everyone's cup of tea, but it certainly is mine. Maybe it's yours too. Thank you for your time and attention. I would like to express sincere gratitude for both. If you want to, hit like, dislike, post a comment and or subscribe. If you feel particularly malleable, you could sign up to my Patreon page and receive new content earlier and support this channel into the bargain. Be my guest. There'll be a link kicking about somewhere, probably in the description. Most new content will land there first, the custom of late. I will be back. You can count on that.